What's up, Las Vegas? We are about to go through a hour plus long conversation with a rising TikTok star out here in Las Vegas. I'm sitting here with Daniel Wittenkeller. He is the CEO of Las Vegas. As I've come to learn in the TikTok world, once you kind of commoditize and colonize a specific niche within TikTok, you become the CEO of whatever it is to the extent of that channel. He is at ItsDaniel.Leo. This man has blown up from 0 followers to over 100,000 in a little less than 6 months, basically showing the entire TikTok space, Las Vegas, and everything that's about it. So, Daniel, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
It's so funny how when we first connected about 6 months ago, we had a Zoom conversation, and it had nothing to do with TikTok. This was before your TikTok adventure, and you'd moved out here from Chicago about 3 years ago.
Exactly.
But it's just crazy how fast life transforms, especially once you find something of success.
It's so crazy. Like, yeah, when I first started talking to you, or like that first conversation we had, I never expected that I would be here for TikTok. So like I said, it's crazy how things transform and transcend, as you said. So
yeah, it's especially in the space of TikTok, where it seems like virality is easier to come by, at least in the beginning it is. But like I think you're up to what, 100 and something thousand followers?
yeah, 144 as of this morning. And it's growing right now at a pace of about, it depends. On a low end day, it's like 3,000 to 4,000 a day. High end, I've seen it up to 20,000 a day.
And do you receive active engagement from TikTok? Is it similar to, let's say, things like Instagram, where there's a lot of bots that kind of follow you but don't engage with you? What's the engagement like on there, at least from your perspective?
The engagement is actually very organic and very solid. I mean, I'd say in some cases, I'm sure the reach is probably a little bit different on TikTok. Like the numbers are probably inflated to an extent, but I think it's just more or less you're getting more organic reach off the fact that you're on the For You page for whatever area you're in. So the algorithm just works a lot different. It's like early days Instagram in a lot of ways, but with a higher magnitude, or like Vine, kind of how that was.
Vine back in the day. It's so funny. I went to a Don't Tell Comedy event last Friday. Don't Tell Comedy is a pop-up comedy event producer out here in Vegas. They started out in LA. Okay. And one of the comedians, literally one of his jokes for 10 minutes was about how TikTokers are coming for every industry and how they're kind of upending the comedic industry, because a lot of these TikTokers have 5-10 million followers and they're gaining more attention than comedians, and just from doing simple dances. So it's crazy to see how TikTok has come to life especially over the last year since the pandemic.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's more than dances now. We saw at the beginning of the pandemic, like we got really introduced to the fact of like the dances and all that, but now the dances are very minimal. I used to see like for every 10 TikTok videos I feel like I'd see like maybe like 6 dances. Now I see like maybe like 2 or 3, so it's people are seeing the fact that the reach is so crazy and you can blow up so quickly that, they're just doing whatever that they feel like they're passionate about, or whatever talent they have, they're just putting it out there.
Right. And your niche, your channel is very specific to Vegas. But before we do dive in that, give us a little bit of a background of who Daniel Wittenkeller is and how you ended up in Vegas.
Man, okay. So I grew up in Chicago originally. Very passionate about the Chicago culture, kind of always growing up. I wasn't an inner city kid. I was kind of, there's a big, I guess, break off between the city and the suburbs in Chicago, and people are very passionate about that. If you say you're from the city and you're not really from the city, someone from the city will get on you about that, So I was raised in Cook County, not the suburb, but the county of where Chicago is. So right outside there. Just grew up like very avid and passionate about basketball and Chicago culture. I started I worked a couple different jobs when I was in Chicago, hard labor. I did carpentry, I did construction, really helped build my character. And during the time when I was working in construction, I started up a clothing brand called Elevate at the time. And it started to make some traction pretty quickly when I was like 21 at the time. And I started getting the celebrity cosigns. pulling up the different rap shows and things like that. I got very introduced and put into the Chicago music scene, Chicago culture, kind of seen it from the background.
It's a pretty big scene down there, isn't it?
Yeah, a very big scene. So I started really getting into it, or per se being around it with the clothing brand, right around the time when the drill music scene was dying off, and the next scene that was more peaceful, like Chance the Rapper, and that was coming up. And I was just around a lot of different things. So it was one thing that really, but the thing that really drove me to Vegas was I had a homie who used to always like follow me around and do different things with me, and for different events, pop-ups. He was actually one who came up with the name Elevate, the spelling, the LV8. And
that coincides so well with Vegas too. It's so funny. It's like it was forged into your future.
It was in a lot of ways, and it was directly because of him. So essentially what happened was as the brand started growing, and I started to be around the company Lyrical Lemonade a lot. I started to see them from the outside growing. So if you're not familiar, I don't know if you're familiar with Lyrical Lemonade. So Lyrical Lemonade is a production and media company based out of Chicago. And they do music videos. If you ever see like the Lemonade carton on like some of the new up and coming rappers' music videos, that's who they are. And Cole is the head of that. He was a suburbs guy, born outside Chicago, and got into the scene, early 20s. And I seen when his first show started with like 3,000 people. And me being in clothing, I'm always kind of around that scene, around the different artists. Speaking briefly to Cole, I wouldn't say I was ever really close to him, but I was close to the scene. And I seen how his culture grew so quickly. Within a year, he had gone from small shows, like 3,000 followers, to selling out the Metro, which is like a $5,000, $6,000, not $5,000, $6,000, but 5,000, 6,000 seat venue, bringing Lil Uzi Vert, all within a year. And now his YouTube channel is probably, I think, well over 20 million followers now. So I seen it when he was at 3,000. And when you see something like that, it's like literally that's literally a degree. I mean, like going to college, like that's experience. That's
equivalent.
It's equivalent because you're seeing how a culture grows. And like firsthand, I mean, I felt like I was in a mentorship program for free, just kind of being around and kind of just experiencing that lifestyle wise. And it was crazy. So when me and my friend had seen that, we were like, man, we got to move to Vegas. It was like, well, we were looking for different cities to move to. For one, the thing about Vegas is it attracted me at first because it was close to LA and I had a lot of connections in LA. And we went to LA a couple times, and then we didn't have a lot of money at the time, but I was able to scrape up some dollars and do a solo trip myself to Vegas just to see what it was like. And I was interested at first. I was looking, from the outside and kind of seeing like where the local culture was and things like that, because I knew that's what was going to, because I was passionate about helping build a local culture.
Yeah, and you need to use a microscope to find the culture out here. It's in its very early days in infancy in terms of growth and what it's going to become and form.
Exactly, and you got to imagine, too, this was like 2015, 16 at the time, so even more infantry stages than it is now. So I made a solo trip out here, and I was sold right away. I didn't touch the strip. I was here for 3 days. I didn't touch the strip for the first 2 days. I went to Henderson. I went to Summerlin. I went to local bars. I just wanted to see how the locals were living and what they were all about. Even like I said, the art district before it was coming up, I was just kind of walking around these different streets, and I'm like, man, like I'm sold. I made a call to my friend. I'm like, we have to go to Vegas because we seen the culture grow in Chicago the way it did with the music scene. And I'm like, the same thing is going to happen to Vegas, but in a grander scale in terms of the entire city, not just the music culture.
Yeah, because all of the different markets and industries are in its infancy rather than in Chicago where it's a city that's been around for a while. So it's much more mature.
Exactly. You have your icons already, right? Like you're in a way, not to say this in a bad way, but you're riding the coattails of whatever legends came before you in a way. There's always, there's Kanye West already in Chicago. There's Jay-Z in New York. There's Tupac in LA. But out here, there's, it's wide open. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, you have Dizzy Wright would be the most popular musically, if that's from here.
I would say Dizzy Wright, yeah. Dizzy Wright to me is a lot like Twista is for Chicago. And I feel like, in a personal opinion, I feel like he should try to tap into that more than he does. But I think he does a really good job of really just emulating Vegas and just being Vegas. So I'll respect him. Shout out to Dizzy Wright.
Right. And when it comes to growing culture, it seems like music is generally the first mover. Maybe it's because the general population identifies with music closely, right? Probably 95% of the people on this planet, this is just a number I'm speculating, listen to music of some sort. So there's a lot more relation where it's, if you're building culture for, I don't know, the skateboard scene or the entrepreneur scene, it's much more finite. So it's the ability to penetrate it is much harder because it's a smaller surface area in terms of reach.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy to me because you think about that, right? And I think it's specifically hip hop too. I mean, you can argue that EDM is really big in this city, you know, with DJs and things of that
EDC
nature.
residencies, clubs.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really that's the strongest music scene out here. But hip hop, I mean, think about what happened with Atlanta. The corporations followed as soon as hip hop touched down, you know? But now what you see now is really unique about Vegas is because you're hearing a lot of transformative ideas that are coming to the city, and you're seeing the local culture grow at the same time in a very in a way similar, I feel like, to Portland. I feel a lot of Portland vibes when I go to the art district.
Yeah.
And in a way where it could be bigger than that, but it's still that passion, the passion for that Vegas culture, which is much different than the Strip, obviously. But which is still obviously a part of the culture. We can't knock the Strip at all.
The Strip is the corporate culture out here, and this is a message that I portray on here a lot, being somebody who worked on the Strip for 10 years. The foundation and the original culture was based around the Strip, right? The first people to move to Vegas were the mob, gamblers. It wasn't filled with residencies and superstars. Like we just saw the most recent UFC fight with Conor McGregor was a few days ago from this recording. And they showed pretty much every superstar at the show, right? Vegas is becoming more glorified. Donald Trump was there. Justin Bieber was there. All these celebrities.
Right.
And so the Strip has grown to now, it used to be the mob mentality, Devil's Wears Prada, and now it's all about exclusivity, VIP. And when you build exclusiveness, what happens? The corporations come in, they find ways to capitalize on every niche and nickel and dime. You see that with venue fees and the parking fees and now surcharge fees. And a lot of people who live in Vegas or are regular tourists are beginning to disassociate from that. And so that's why we're seeing huge growth down in the arts district in downtown, because a lot of these different local cultures are being able to distance themselves from the Strip and build their own identities.
Right, and that's a great point. I 100% agree with you. Like, I understood the resentment before I came to Vegas, too, and the reason for that. I could see it, you know. I seen why that is what it is. If the thing is, the Strip doesn't do a very good job of bringing in the local culture either. Of course, because of the corporate dollars and, you know, what they have to, I guess, the agreements they have, you know, and just, you know.
Specific contract language. You can only go about marketing in a certain way. The Strip only does a really good job of bringing in locals in terms of the clubs. And those are all generally privately owned. I think Wynn is the only casino that actually runs its own entertainment group in terms of governing XS and EBC. But Tao Group doesn't own a hotel out here, and those are all private entities, right? Hakkasan Group, before it got bought out by Tao, also didn't own any of the casinos. So those are all private organizations that market. But the overall casinos are definitely lagging in terms of bringing on the locals to spend money in their casinos or time.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, like, if you think about it too, that's why Vegas is so unique in that way and why there's such a break off in the culture. Think about going to like Chicago, right? You might see a local artist that's going to, more times than not, you'll see a local artist that's going to be on, you know, a billboard, right? Out here, you don't see local artists on billboards when you go to the Strip, but you know, you hope to see it downtown someday. That's where I feel like we need, even as the world moves towards social media and away from digital ads and things of that, well, not digital ads, but billboards and things of that nature, I want to see some billboards of local artists downtown. That's what I want to see. So, because that's what I'm used to seeing in Chicago, you know, and we don't have that.
Maybe because some of those locals or entrepreneurs or artists, they just haven't built themselves enough publicity. There is definitely how do I describe this? There's definitely a severance between being a local public figure that's from Vegas and being a public figure who's migrated out here from a different city. I'm still, through conversations like this, trying to understand where that has gone wrong. Maybe we really are just in this golden age that is literally within the first 5 or 10 years of building this foundation. But I do think that COVID has kind of accelerated this trend now that many Las Vegas locals are now beginning to second guess their place in the service industry. I've had a lot of coworkers leave the nightclub that I worked at. I've had a lot of friends who've worked on the Strip for 10 years decide not to go back because they actually want to build something substantial outside of just renting out their time.
Exactly. I know, and that's amazing to see, because I was speaking with somebody about this yesterday, because one of my first friends who I met out here, his name's Reggie. Shout out to Reggie. I was talking to him yesterday, and he was like my first real, I guess, plug in Vegas. Kind of introduced me on the ground end to like what was going on locally. He seemed like he knew everybody. Just a guy I played basketball with, and he was he was been working in hospitality basically his whole life up until he's a little bit older than me. He's about 30, but until recently, he's going back to school and he's trying to pursue a different career path. And I told him, because, all due respect, I was like, do you feel like you're settling? Because he said, yeah, I feel like I'm settling a little bit. I was like, why do you feel like you're settling? He said, because I want security. And I was like, basically everybody. I was like, if you used and he was trying to talk about me. Oh, but you do it this way and you do it that way. I said, no, don't talk about me. We're talking about you right now. Like, we're in the infantry stages of a culture. And I feel like what's crazy about this, it's like, I feel like Vegas obviously has a hospitality mindset where the locals are brought up to provide so much service that you become employees of the overriders. You're kind of you're put into a box when you live in Vegas, even though Vegas is such an open city. As a local, so you're put into this box of serving, providing service, rather than trying to take over the city. And that's where someone like me, coming from the outside, think even the earliest days of Vegas. I mean, with the foundation of the city in general, it was people from outside of Vegas that came in and built a name for themselves in Vegas because they see an opportunity. And got ingrained in whatever was going on with the culture. So,
yeah, only 25% of the Las Vegas population are Las Vegas locals who were born and raised here. So you're saying 3/4 of this 2.5 million population are not from here, right? They're transplants, and those are the ones who are generally building culture out here, which I've begun to notice. I'm one of a few Las Vegas locals who has begun trying to build a brand through social media and through conversations and focusing on entrepreneurship and networking. And the reason, or at least my speculation as to why I'm personally on this ground floor, is because Nevada is always one of the worst in educations. So most people don't go off to UNLV. Out of my graduating class, there was maybe 10 people in my entire high school who went to UNLV out of my senior class of 500. So, but what you can do is you can go on the Strip and make $80,000 to $150,000 serving drinks or becoming a banquet server or working your way up to become a manager. And so there's an easy exit in terms of education and creation. And what most of these people do is they get stuck in these jobs making, a comfortable amount of money, and they kind of just check out and they say, I'm comfortable here. I work 4 days a week. I'm making $80,000. I don't need to build a brand. I don't need to do anything. I'm content doing this easy job, which a monkey can do, serving. I have to tell everyone out there that wants to get in the industry. I was a busser for 5 years at one of the most popular nightclubs in the world. Anybody could do that job. It is not a hard job to do, but you do get comfortable making that amount of money, and you just never end up doing anything else outside of that. Maybe going out and partying a lot.
Exactly. That's an excellent point, because when I think of comparing it to Chicago, right, or like into any city, but Chicago, for example, you have you have a middle class, but the middle class is a little bit different. So the middle class is a little hazy. In Chicago, it's basically you're either here or you're here. But in Vegas, there's no here. I feel like everybody, for the most part, is up in here. If they're trying to do something, they're up in here, and they get comfortable in here, in this middle portion. But in reality, there's so much more opportunity to get over to the next level that's just untapped.
It is. There's a lot of untapped potential, and a lot of people are beginning to realize that, especially through the pandemic. Once all of your habits are broken, and going out and partying every night for years, when you couldn't go do that for a year, a lot of people introspectively looked inwards, including myself, and decided, hey, what do I want to do? And as we were discussing before we started recording, I'm super passionate about Vegas. You're super passionate about Vegas. It's one of the most diverse cities in the entire country, maybe the world. There's so many amenities and opportunities out here, and that's why everyone decides to move out here. But I think Vegas has a marketing issue internally. Externally, amazing, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Now it's something different, only happens in Vegas. We have over 40 million people who visit here a year outside of the pandemic year. But internal marketing, the local scene has stagnated. Tony Hsieh tried to take on this massive agenda and was doing a fairly good job until he unfortunately passed away. But trying to attract the tech scene out here, trying to find entrepreneurs to invest capital in. But maybe it's because there's so much temptation across Las Vegas, and it's also a very hypersexualized city, right? We have the best strip clubs, we have the best clubs with the most attractive women. All of the cocktail servers are extremely attractive and models. And so nobody's focusing on what's happening here locally. Everyone's focusing on the activities that surround the strip, and the idea that you can hit $1 million on the slot machine, or you can go to the strip club and then hook up with that stripper, take her home at the end of the night, or meet a significant other for the night at a nightclub. The anonymity and also the unknown of what might happen out on a night on the strip defeats the attractiveness of trying to seek out what's happening locally.
Exactly. But I feel like we're definitely coming into that, whatever that perspective and whatever that, I guess, that character looks like for local Vegas. I feel like we're coming into it because another point I wanted to make is think about the foundation of what your biggest cities went through, right? Chicago is a great example again. The Chicago fire tragedy, right? Think about unfortunately the Vegas shooting. I feel like the Vegas shooting is in a lot of the way the Chicago fire was for Chicago, where the city kind of rebuilt itself. And I feel like that's where the local culture is really building off of, is the tragedy in a lot of ways.
They have the city has formed around #VegasStrong in the most cliche strong way.
Yeah.
Because we had not had a tragedy like that. We did have the MGM fire that happened in the 70s, where I think it was 30 people, 80 people died, something in that range, where people got trapped. But outside of that, there had been nothing that brought this much attention. And I'd never seen the city band around something than the October 1 shooting. The entire city was fully in. The locals it was resonating with the locals. And I think almost to a degree, it's been forgotten about internationally. But locally, it has not been forgotten. Maybe that's because the traditional media has been trying to push it under the rug, but you don't see it. You don't see it ever being talked about as the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. But the local scene has not forgotten about it.
Of course not. And it's crazy because it built an edge for the city in a lot of ways. They said that Vegas strong message. Mm-hmm. You see it right away with the sports. It's a very even though you think about Vegas, we're talking about, the complacency that Vegas gives you. It's crazy because on the contrary, the appearance of Vegas sports is very grunty. It's very edgy. It's very gritty. It's very similar to a Chicago or an Atlanta in a lot of ways. And you can see kind of by the personality of what the sports makes the city emulate itself as is kind of where the local culture is growing into. And it's amazing to see. I mean, we're at the forefront of something that's going to be spectacular.
It's huge. So. This decade is going to be the most transformative decade in Las Vegas history. And a trend that I'm beginning to see happening more is the integration of internet communities. It's been subtly overlooked for a long time. And I just had Jacob's Life in Vegas on here, who has a huge account on YouTube. And he talks about, and a lot of content creators discuss about how the casinos were very hesitant to allow content creators to come through the casino and record. But downtown has been very accepting of content creators like the Plaza and Circa, and like look at Jonathan Jostle actually has a podcast, right? So the downtown is has realized before the Strip that in order to build an economy for the future, you have to allow content creators to come in and glorify your business. You know, maybe you're going to get some hate on it as well, but it's free publicity. And that's, as you noted before, marketing is migrating away from the static model of billboards and more to the dynamic route of social media.
Exactly. And it's, you think about it too, like Vegas kind of has its figure downtown too. Think about Derek Stevens and what now he's being so instrumental with bringing in the A's. I don't know if you've seen the articles recently about how much he's trying to push to bring the A's downtown. And if we get a baseball stadium downtown, that is going to be insane. And just the way that's going to be built, I don't even know where it would be built.
They want to rebuild out Cashman.
You build out Cashman?
They want to renovate it because it's already a baseball stadium. But you could come in and obviously if you have an MLB payroll, you have literally billions of dollars to upgrade it. But it has this space to hold a baseball stadium.
Yeah. I want to see I'm curious about Cashman because I want to see what it looks like in terms of parking, you know, after the renovations, but also what gets built around Cashman in that way, right? How does the city look in 10 years when you've got a baseball stadium, you got everything that's going on around it? I want to see what that looks like. That would be interesting.
Downtown is the perfect place because Derek Stevens, Jonathan Jostle, and some of these other leaders downtown are being instrumental in pioneering downtown's growth and realizing that they can't be dependent on the Strip anymore. But I have noticed a lot of tourists and actually a lot of Vegas content creators have been spending more time downtown. They find it much more enjoyable. I don't know if that's because of the price difference from the Strip or the culture is being built out differently. But I think allowing internet communities to migrate around that area is only going to be exponentially beneficial to downtown, and the arts district is captivating a lot of ways in that manner.
Yeah. It's really dope to see, like, especially like we're talking about Tony Hsieh. Tony Hsieh opened the book and now it's being written, and it's being written in such a very unique way. And I love that, especially with, like we're saying with our figures. I mean, think about like Derek Stevens and like what he emulates is more like that old mobster mentality. He literally takes on the personality of Binion. It seems like, you know,
yes,
which is crazy.
That's a good relation.
Yeah. So you could tell where he got his influence from. So it's cool to see that. I just wonder what it's going to look like in 5 to 10 years.
We're gonna see massive growth, but in terms of building culture, internet communities, we should discuss a little bit about your channel, right? Because you seem to have a lot of knowledge and a lot of depth in terms of creating culture. You were on the forefront. Also to come to Vegas in 2015 and then walk around the arts district. That was when Rebar was just first opening, and Makers and Finders, which were some of the first restaurants and bars down here in this area.
Yep.
But to identify that and say this area is going to be huge, and now as we record this, sitting in the arts district, there's over 20 bars and probably 10 to 15 restaurants that sit in this area. So you foresaw that and you see that culture is being built. How are you trying to build culture through your TikTok channel?
See, it's really just highlighting what's going on locally, because even locals, like we were saying earlier, locals don't even know about it half the time. Really seeing what I learned in Chicago and kind of seeing where Vegas fits in, like in terms of certain sectors. So like we were saying with influencers, different foodies, nothing against the other foodies. I love all the people that I've been working with lately in terms of that, and people I've been meeting. A lot of them, they go to the same spots all the time. They want to go to the more bougie spots. They want to go to the Strip, which is cool. I love to go and do that as well. But they don't... I don't see anyone else that's in the lane of what I'm doing, except maybe one or two other people that are showing what local Vegas really is, like the spots that people on the east side go to, you know? Like, cause think about it, you don't go to some, a lot of these places on the strip. You probably do at some point, but I like to go, like I said, the South Point deal. Everyone knows about the South Point deal locally, but these foodies that have these huge accounts, they don't know the South Point deal, which is crazy. It's
Midnight to 6, baby.
Exactly. Midnight to 6. Exactly. And that was like my biggest video that I did. It just broke 3 million as of yesterday.
Wow.
So yeah, in a little over a couple weeks. So, and that was in most of the comments when I'm bringing through. I go through, I read all the comments. It's locals that are just like, I've been going there for 20 years. I've been going there for 15 years, and no one's talked about it. Half the people are like, you're ruining the spot. Half the people are like, oh, I love you. Thank you for putting people onto it. So that's amazing. Another one I did recently was Fat Boy as well. Just another local spot I heard from a person that I used to work with. Just a spot on the east side. And a lot of them foodies, that they're not trying to go there. That they're going where they're going to get the comp food, or they're going where they know they're going to get the views and the Instagrammable shots.
Do you only capture small? These are 30-second videos, right, or 60 seconds? That's the limitation on TikTok.
No, you can do 3-minute videos now.
They upgraded that.
They upgraded that. Yeah, I don't do 3-minute videos, but yeah, I typically stick between. Sometimes it's a 10-second video. It depends on what it is. Usually it's between 30 and 45 seconds I see is the best for my account.
And do you only create videos surrounding restaurants and food places?
No, I don't. I've been doing bars. Sometimes I'll cover what's going on locally. If there's a fire, there's something that's going on in the news, the weather. Just anything I feel like is really hot and on the pulse that day in Vegas, I try to cover. So I don't stick to just food. I'm just, at the end of the video, follow me for everything Vegas. I cover everything Vegas, and besides the culture, the spots, and just about everything. So
you know what? Summer is here. Football is about to start. Baseball has started. Basketball is going on. Every major championship is right around the corner. But you know what is not? A wild and hairy bush. Yes, that's right. Tame your pubes with help from our friends over at Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. I know they've been sponsoring the show for quite some time now. You guys are very familiar with this. Their 4th-generation performance package includes a brand new lawnmower. If an athlete treats their body like royalty, why not treat your pubes like Olympic gold? Fellas, do right by your balls and join the 2 million worldwide who trust Manscaped. It's been a little over a month now since Vegas has been fully opened. I've been to a concert at the brand new stadium out here. I went to a casino opening. I think that the world is ready to get back to force, especially out here in Sin City. But what you guys need to do is get ready and open yourself up to the Performance Package 4.0, which is from Manscaped. Inside the Performance Package 4.0, you'll find a handful of things. You'll find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver, ball deodorant, crop reviver, toner, plus 2 free gifts, some boxer briefs, which I love, I wear on the regular, and a Shed travel bag. All of these products in the Performance Package 4.0 has a handful of utility. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor. It has a 4,000 LED spotlight. The package also comes with the Weed Whacker to get right up in that nose to make sure that you can get out all of those prickly hairs and also save your ear from some dissatisfaction as well. Now hear me out, everybody. Use the code THEGUESTLIST, one word, the guest list, just like the podcast, over at manscaped.com to receive 20% off and free shipping. I have had dozens of friends order this product. I have not heard anything bad. I use it on the regular, especially when you're out here in Las Vegas getting ready to go out and have a good time. You want to make sure that your confidence is at an all-time high. Make sure you use the code THEGUESTLIST for 20% off and free shipping over at manscaped.com. Let's get back to the show, guys.
It's taken on a lot of responsibility being the CEO of Las Vegas.
it really, yeah, it really is. It's pretty crazy. Las Vegas. So yeah,
it's a really unique city. I've had this conversation with a few people, but one of the reasons why I decided to focus on networking and entrepreneurship and tech in Las Vegas is because nobody was covering that kind of thing. Whereas covering food restaurants, bars, to me, it always seemed like low-hanging fruit. And that's not like an attack or an offensive or anything like that. It just seems like that's the easiest way to capture a lot of attention. And it wasn't like super interesting to me, but I know that's where a lot of the attention goes through. A lot of influencers always told me, if you don't know what to post, just post a picture of food, and you'll bring the algorithm right back to your preference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and same thing. Yeah, on TikTok, it's just the food videos do the best, obviously, but I don't like to stick into a food box. No matter what, I just don't want to be in that box, and I feel like that's why my account's done so well, is because people see it. They see it's not just food. People hit me up for so many different things of things to do. I'd say, yeah, the food is a portion of it. I'd say about 65%, probably 60-70% of people, when they DM me, they're coming into town, or people locally, they ask me about food spots. But it's kind of been growing the last, I'd say, like 2 weeks, because it's taken off so quickly. It's like you're doing different metrics every week. More and more people are asking me about things to do in Vegas. Of course, tourists are going to ask for plugs for nightclubs, but they're asked for, a lot of them are asking for things to do with families, different things to do that traditional people in Vegas don't, go and do. Away from the stereotypes.
As tourists visit Vegas more frequently, they have been looking to do things off the strip. I had Julian Romero, who runs Vegas Confessions, on here, and he pretty much comes in. He doesn't live in Vegas. He documents his entire trip. He does interviews. He goes to different restaurants and things like that. But the majority of his best videos are all things that he's doing off of the strip, whether they're down in the Arts District, or he's going up to Red Rock, or even like the kind of the outer boundaries of downtown Vegas, where some of these restaurants and bars and activities lie. And so as Vegas becomes more popularized, and I already feel like it's one of the most popular cities in the world, those who visit here frequently, they want to find things outside of just doing a steak dinner at STK, or going to Excess for spending a night and maybe $10,000.
Exactly, and there's a certain type of allure with that too. You see where the demand is then, right? The fact that people are looking for it shows that there's a space in the gap that can be filled, which is essentially what people like me and you are doing, where we're trying to be that figure that or I guess that personality or that face, where they go and they look for the the off beaten path in Vegas. Oh, it's like, we can go here, and as it grows even bigger, just think about the fact of having whole stadiums in downtown Vegas, and knowing that you're a focal point and a person of interest in a city, in a full city of its own, like its own separate city.
That's what captures my attention and my, I don't say dreams, but if you could get on the ground floor of something, and this is a similar ideology that I have with crypto, is that if you're there in the beginning, all you have to do is pretty much just hang around and be consistent, and then you just win. You just win by virtue, right? Joe Biden has been in politics for almost 50 years, and now he's president because he literally just hung around the longest. And
exactly.
He's there to the end, and he was consistent, whether you like his policies or not. He was consistent in winning and being present and showing face value.
Yep, he is. So he just ends up there. It's the same thing we're taking on, but like I said, hopefully it doesn't take that long. But it's like that, kind of like fast track. Think 5 or 10 years from now, that's where you could be at.
Yeah, social media amplifies the network effect, and then crypto just does that on steroids. But with social media, you can blow up through one viral video, and as long as you know how to then steer your direction, then you can amplify those new followers to whatever message you want to portray. But you do see this happening with one-hit wonder artists, whether they're making music, or one-hit social media influencers, where they make a viral video and then they just don't capture or utilize or capitalize on that attention to their benefit and steer it in the right direction.
Yep. That's a great point. I agree with that.
It's when you first started your TikTok, did you present yourself as the same way as you do now? Were there any pivots along this 6-month journey?
I'd say, I guess, finding where the brand of it all kind of comes into play. But starting up, it was really just off of passion just for Vegas. I seen my girlfriend, one of her friends went viral, and I'm like, man, we go to so many restaurants, we go to so many different places in Vegas that people don't know. I need to just start posting this. So I just basically started posting, kind of just learning my way. TikTok is so simple and has so much ease of where you just record on your phone and just do a little voiceover and you have content, And The videos have, I do them so quickly. I mean, it's not like I'm sitting down doing hours and hours of editing, right? As opposed to like what a YouTuber would do to not get the same reach. So I saw TikTok as an opportunity of like, hey, I could just do this with whatever we're doing, kind of just like documenting our lifestyle, vlogging in a certain way, but putting out these little blurbs and these little videos. And I said it just really grew into its own. There was really no pre-planning, I feel like, with anything. I feel like most things I do, I micromanage and pre-plan too much sometimes. But with TikTok, it was the complete contrary, where I was just, I go and make a video. But you can see, obviously, the videos have grown since then. I've kind of learned different tools with editing and kind of finding what works for my audience and what they like, I found my intro, the CEO of Las Vegas tag, the follow me for everything Vegas. That's in every video because it keeps people in and it keeps people interested, and they know to go back to me and that I'm a brand and I'm just not just a person that's putting you out with a spot. Like, I'm a brand myself. So that's where I'm trying to really continue to grow and capitalize on. So.
And how would you describe your community? Is it more locals? Is it more tourists? Is it just people who like you as a person? How would you identify that community?
It's really an even mix. It's a perfect blend and even mix of, like I said, locals, tourists that are visiting, people who are moving here, people who have lived here, their whole lives. So it's a great mix. There's not really a certain I guess a way I can categorize that. It's more just like people that just love Vegas and like Vegas or are interested in Vegas or have never been to Vegas. So it's just everything Vegas.
And when they're engaging with you, are they more appreciative to what you're posting? Are they asking you general questions about Vegas, like they want you to be the personal concierge service, or are they requesting certain types of videos?
It's the same thing, even mix. I guess maybe because the audience is so broad, I can't really pinpoint what a certain sector for that, but it's a perfect blend and a beautiful mix of all of it.
And do you take audience recommendations?
I do, yeah. I'm very instrumental in that. I read every comment, so I'm very instrumental in and very open to doing different spots that people put me on with as well. So it's a community just about Vegas in general, or sometimes it's spots I never heard of. Sometimes it's a spot that is just legendary in Vegas that people want me to go and check out, someone who's born and raised here. So it just really depends, but I kind of just go off the cuff with just about all of it. So.
And now that you have a large following, 140,000 is no easy feat, to say the least. Are you planning on funneling that audience to different platforms, or are you looking to just continue what you're doing?
I've been really thinking about it a lot. I think doing a YouTube channel and a Patreon and doing more behind the scenes of it all is one thing I'm looking into doing. But right now, I'm really just riding the wave with where this thing's going, because I really don't have a clear answer, or my conscience isn't giving me really a clear path to go besides just continue to do what I'm doing right now. When that time comes, I'll meet that bridge. But right now, it's really just continually doing what I'm doing, and I love what I'm doing. So just keep doing, just keep it going. So,
how would you describe I guess we call it Vegas TikTok culture? Like Vegas Twitter is freaking insane. They want to know about every menu change. They want to know about who's filling the beverage manager position at the Palms and every little detail. That's why Vital Vegas and Scott does so well, and Las Vegas locally are the two biggest accounts, because that fan base is just so rabid. They're so intense. How would you describe Vegas TikTok?
Vegas TikTok, I'd say, is probably a little bit more toxic.
Yeah,
it's toxic. I mean, it's like people, I hate Vegas, I love Vegas. I've been here 26 years, I hate Vegas. It's like, okay, then move. But it's I said it's probably a little bit more toxic on that end. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more. How do I say this? A little more blunt. It's very blunt, not as educational, just more blunt, more.
More like this is what it is.
This is what it is type of people. Yeah, it was like, because you have a mix, right? Like at least Vegas TikTok for me, it's it's a lot of people just hating on spots and just being completely negative with absolutely everything you do. I mean, I could go out and say the sky is blue and they'll say it's green. I mean, it's like that's the type, some of the type of people that are in the comments. But I mean, I guess it enhances the engagement in some way. It's a comment, so whatever it is, and they continue to follow and continue to go to every video. But it's a mix of the toxic comments and people also fighting for the city at the same time. They're passionate the same way me and you are, and just love to be here, or people who are passionate about the city or looking to move here, so are curious.
Have you collaborated with other Vegas TikTokers or just Vegas content creators from other platforms?
Specifically Vegas, right now, I can't, I gotta say no, but I've been going to a lot of different spots and meeting a lot of influencers. I got a couple things in the works with that, so.
Yeah, I see you've been working with Bridge over at Bite Size Magazine, or
Bridge is one. Yeah, Bridge is a good guy. He's a Chicago guy too, so we have a lot of good, interesting conversations about that. And he sees the culture in a very similar way that I do too. So coming from a perspective of an outsider from Chicago as well. So those are cool conversations to have, especially with him being a little bit older too. So
yeah, I like what Bite Size is doing because he's capturing the short attention span of the younger generations and formalizing that in a way that's a digital magazine, but then he's also collabing with local content creators, so he doesn't have to put out 30-second videos or 45-second videos. He can just work with Daniel, and you can both mutually benefit off each other because you're capturing each other's audiences.
Exactly. Yeah, he's Bridge is doing a really good job, and the whole team at Bite Size, like I said, really providing an umbrella to everything that's going on, and more of these content creators, not so much getting under the umbrella, but working instrumentally together in a way that's mutually beneficial, and not like in the way of like an employee or anything like that, or moving like a business, but moving like a conglomerate. So it's a cool concept.
Cool. So we've been talking about culture. We went over your huge TikTok account. Let's have some little fun and let's speculate. We've been talking about how Vegas is going to see a tremendous amount of growth over the next 10 years. Are there any trends that you foresee happening or you like to see happen?
What's crazy is the music is going to be one thing that's going to be instrumental. I think hip hop is going to come up in a big way, but I think there's going to be an interesting relationship. I've been really kind of formulating this. I don't really even really know how to describe it, but 2 points I'll make. One is the hip hop coming up and the relationship that it has with tech. That's going to be very interesting when you think about some of these other tech projects. I'm sure you've heard of it could be a joke, it could not, but Blue Tech Park.
Yes, Scott makes fun of it all the time about how it's not going to happen.
Yeah, but concepts of that nature, the fact that they're being talked about in Vegas, and that something like that could be built in the next 5 or 10 years, and mixing that in with the local culture is what I'm really excited about, because it's going to peddle everything in that relationship. Another thing too, there's an interesting thing about Resorts World in the north side of the Strip, and the doing away with the classic Las Vegas Strip, and kind of that whole area is kind of starting to become a little bit more metropolitan in a lot of ways. You see Majestic as well is going to be built over there. You see the Sphere, but the thing about Resorts World, when I walked in, it felt like a Mecca. It feels like more of a not as much of a resort like the other ones, but if to me it feels very similar to when I went to the Willis Tower the Sears Tower. I don't like to call it the Willis Tower. People know it probably not as the Willis Tower, but the Sears Tower is what we call it in Chicago. When I went to a meeting there, and just the you see people running around on the floor in these huge hallways, like similar to how the district is. And now that you got the Vegas Loop there as well, there's going to be a lot of business to business movement going on in that, and transactions consistently going down. So it's cool how it's emulating how I could see it really becoming, like I said, almost like the floor of like a Chicago stock exchange. You know what I mean? It's like it's an interesting vibe that a lot of people don't see.
Resort World is really trying to capture that integration of technology and internet communities and trying to apply that in a way that separates themselves from the rest of the Strip, right? At the end of the day, everyone is competing for a finite amount of resources in terms of capital. So they are doing a good job. They've also partnered with Gemini, which is a crypto exchange, and they're introducing a cashless gambling system, which unfortunately was unoperational on opening day, but it seems like they're definitely putting their minds together and they are trying to collaborate in some sort of innovative manner that hasn't been, which has not migrated the strip at all in some sense. So it's cool to see that kind of thinking line there. So I do agree with you that it's going to become a mecca, and it's also right across the street from the Wynn. So they already have a lot of competition, as Wynn is one of the top casinos in on the entire strip. And also XS is literally one of the best nightclubs for the last 10 years.
Exactly. Yeah, and as I said, it's really interesting, that whole the fact that the Wynn's going to be included, and the Wynn's kind of like a classic Vegas name, but then it's like as soon as you cross the street, it's almost like the Resorts World is what it is as a brand, but the vibe is just completely different, And like I said, Wynn is I say obviously one of the the bougier resorts on the strip, one of the more high price, but Resorts World is as well, but it's just a different vibe. It's a more minimal, less theming, and feels like Resorts World is very open to change. It seems like, or very it seems like it's gonna be very impromptu. I think in 5 years, Resorts World may look different in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Where the Wynn and the Venetian and these other resorts are kind of put into a box of what they have to be. Resorts World is built for change, it feels like.
Yes, and change is important in terms of growth and innovating. Speaking of the tech scene has been growing out here. There is a lot of intention to make Vegas, I've heard the term, instead of Silicon Valley, they call it like the Silicon Desert.
I've seen that, yeah.
And so I've been hearing a lot of those remnants in terms of speaking. The city actually is putting a lot of emphasis on technology as well. There's a monthly meetup that I've been going to called Tech in the Alley, which is actually down here in the Arts District, which has been a combination of UX, UI designers, tech entrepreneurs, tech startups, venture capitalists, and it's growing. And it's a collaboration between the city of Las Vegas and individual entrepreneurs, and everyone is trying to attract all of these tech companies out here because Vegas has no state taxes. That's one of the main attractions, especially if you're a tech business who's making tens or hundreds of $1 million a year. You want to save that money so that you can invest it back into your company. I've also been working with the UNLV Office of Economic Development in terms of my own blockchain endeavors and that meetup that we've been hosting. But they have a 144-acre property, UNLV does, called the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park.
Right.
And they plan to build campus housing and a startup incubator, and they already have 100 or so different tech companies that work out there with the shared working space. And then you also layer on top of that all of the tech employees who have moved out to Vegas over the last year because Facebook, Google, Twitter, all of these tech companies said, hey, you don't have to work in the office anymore. You could work remote. And those are all the people who are buying up all these houses, as I've had discussions about this multiple times, multiple people. So what's going to happen is these tech employees, after being acclimated to the city for a few years, they're going to want to do something with this money because now they're saving on taxes and they're saving on the cost of living of being out here. And so they're going to have an excess amount of capital to want to build something. And since they do have a tech foundation and background, they're probably going to put that towards some sort of innovation in the tech space.
Exactly. Yeah, and I said that's an interesting, like we were saying about the tech coming here. It's an interesting point to bringing it back to the culture then as well, and people seeing, oh wow, being open-minded, oh wow, I can move to Vegas, because a lot of people think it's so expensive to live here, and it's like it's growing to become more expensive, but it's very, very affordable to live out here, and there's ease in terms of a lot of different things, a lot of flexibility. I feel like a lot of people weren't open to moving to Vegas before because of how expensive they see the strip as, but now they see, oh wow, I can get a house and make equity like that quickly, and there's more people moving there as well. And on top of that, I can migrate, and there's more room to build. A lot of people are seeing that from the outside, and that's amazing to see. And there's still that dynamic of moving to Vegas as opposed to, like, I mean, Reno's booming as well in terms of that, but in the tech scene and people migrating easier probably there to, I guess maybe from Silicon Valley to Reno.
Yeah, actually, I had Jeff Sailing on the podcast. He runs Startup NV, it's the largest startup incubator in Nevada as a whole. And he mentioned that Reno is actually much farther ahead in the tech space. he said about 60% of the tech companies that are receiving funding through Startup Nevada, they've funded about $70 million in funding towards a bunch of companies. 60% of them reside in Reno. But he said that Vegas is on the uptrend, and eventually it'll overtake it just because of the sheer size of Vegas and all of the innovation. But we're just going to have to ride it out and see. But what's as you mentioned before, a lot of the outsiders are seeing the flashes of Vegas potential. It's being portrayed through the lens of us, right? Through your TikTok channel, through the Guest List podcast, through shows like Jacob's Life in Vegas, the YouTube channels, and all of these other ideas. And so what's happening as the creative economy grows is that those who spend more time digitally, generally Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X, they're receiving all of their information through independent content creators. So what's happening is entrepreneurs are kind of taking all of the effort and they're putting the team on their back in a sort of way and pioneering the way that people see Vegas and the way that adoption is spread throughout the city through all of these various sectors.
That's an excellent point because I've never really thought of it that way either. Because when I think about it, like before I moved to Vegas, one of the people who I watched a lot, his YouTube channel was Jacob's Life in Vegas. Like just trying to get information about local Vegas. It's like that's who I was going to and watching. And the fact that we're sitting in and that was, it said 5 years ago, and he's a huge part of it now, in a YouTube sense. But the fact that I never really conceptualized that till now is that we're actually playing a role at this moment. It's not building to a moment. We're in that moment right now.
We are. Yep. And as these social media platforms grow, some of them might be at a stagnant point now in terms of onboarding new users. Everyone has their different channel of social media that they prefer. Personally, I'm a big Twitter guy. I've loved Twitter. I will talk about it all the time, but I do understand the utility of Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok and all of these other ones. But you're always going to have that one platform that you go look for your information for. And so if you could find your own niche within these different platforms, then you're that go-to guy, right? You're the CEO of Las Vegas.
Right, exactly. There's still rooms for COOs, and all that. So it's amazing.
That's funny to put it. Yeah, we need a chief operating officer or a CTO, right?
That's what I'm saying. If anyone's open to that, I'm accepting resumes.
Yeah, that's why I'm so bullish on Vegas. I'm bullish on the world of content creators and influencers, whether influencer kind of has a negative stigma attached to it. So maybe it'll get some sort of PC variation in the future, but it's up to us to eventually to identify all of these areas or points of weakness in the city that we want to bring up, or that we want to focus on the strengths of the city and then bring more attention and awareness to those. But it's definitely a counterbalance because I think the mistrust in institutions is only growing larger by the day. More people I see discussing about their hatred towards CNN and Fox and even a lot of the universities, right? I mean, I've been working hand in hand with UNLV, but just the overall college experience has had a lot of flack recently and it has kind of a negative stigma attached to it. And the younger generations just aren't going to college because you could literally learn everything on YouTube. I learned probably 95% of what I needed for this podcast off of YouTube. So
right.
The adoption of remote working, remote learning, and the explosion of the creatives that migrate around the creative economy is going to be the way of the future in terms of exposing or shedding light on all of these different areas within Vegas.
I think that was just a perfect pitch of like why people should be bullish on Vegas. This is the exact reason. It's crazy because the same baselines we were talking about earlier that are like negatives that keep you into the hospitality mindset that keeps people trapped is also a baseline for people that are done with universities. The same type of deal. It's crazy how in the pandemic there was like such this flack of like, oh, Vegas is done. Vegas will never come back. It'll never bounce back. And it's like the opposite. It's
complete
like
opposite.
The whole thing, the whole script is being rewritten about Vegas right now. And the fact that, instead of going to college, people come out here, get a job in hospitality, and they could use that to start something else, to fund a different project. They don't have to go and work, they could work, I guess maybe like a server job, or they talk about how, the server all, came up and did that. When you think about different jobs that people have worked, different like backbreaking jobs before they became successful, there's more stories that could be written like that. But think about like bussers, like you say, bussers that came from, that someone who moved here was a busser, made $60,000 a year, used that money to fund whatever project they were going to work on. It's like that dream to build something in Vegas is very alive, and there's less. The negatives can become positives very quickly.
Yeah,
with perspective.
As long as you don't give in to the temptations of the strip and put the money back, because that was a big issue, and that's something that plagued me for the first few years that I worked at Omnia. I was 22 when I got hired there. Being a young kid making a lot of money, and you're around this glorified experience that is the strip, you tend to want to try to, you want to embody those ideals, but then you also want to embrace it and try to do the same exact thing that they're doing, right? Like you're taking care of rich millionaires, buying table service. You want to go out and buy it and get table service. You want to have that same feeling on the opposite side of the table. But the issue is that you overdo it, and then all the money that you're making, you go and spend it and put it back into the system. And I think that's an issue that Vegas has faced for a long time, is that there's a lot of money generated on the strip, but the locals have a very hard time of pulling that capital off the strip, because a lot of times they go put it back in, whether it's sports betting, gambling, expensive dinners, spending money at the club, renting hotel rooms, whatever it is. So there's not as much capital that should be pulled off of that and spent on the local economy, is because of the temptation and that like luxurious lifestyle that's the VIP nature of the strip now.
Yep, that's a great point too, because I remember when I moved here, I was like, right before I moved, I'm like, I'm not going to gamble that much. I'm not going to gamble. I ended up within a couple weeks, I was playing craps 3 days out of the week. You know, so I feel like with the right mindset and the right perspective, at least from an outsider looking in, and even a local that, because I know a lot of locals that don't gamble at all, and just, they're mature to that as well, but or mature to the fact that they see gambling everywhere and desensitized from it. But I feel like me being a person who came from the outside in, no doubt you're gonna lose a little bit of money gambling at first. At least I did. But as your mindset and your perspective increases, you start to see, okay, I'm not going to hit $1 million tomorrow. You learn and you desensitize as the time goes on.
Yep, you have to learn how to balance your mindset. You have to learn how to balance your skill levels and your entertainment value. Whatever you see, one day you'll be gambling, then it gets boring, and then you start going to the club, and that's fun for 6 months to a year, and then you start seeing shows, and then eventually you're just hanging out at the local bars because you're like, I'm completely done with the strip. I was at EBC yesterday, and I used to love going to the day clubs. I was all about it. I was there every weekend. After like 2 hours of being there, I was just like, man, this isn't for me anymore. It's like, it's a completely different experience once you learn. And I think it's because now that I'm building a brand and I have something of substance that exists within my own foundation, that I realized that industry isn't for me, because I'm not as lost as I once was.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I guess for me, that's where I differ, because lifestyle is such a passion for me, and just lifestyle drives me, and the lifestyle of Vegas. So yeah, I may pull up at the club or that day club, but I don't know. I have a different mindset with it. And it's a way to document as well for me, because I have to document the lifestyle. So I have to be out there. Mm-hmm. I can't be in home documenting Vegas. So it's just balance with it. You just got to have that balance.
Yeah, you got to have the yin and yang. It's tough out here, but as you become more acclimated, you start understanding the inner workings of Vegas, and not just the strip, but the culture itself. And I love in the beginning that you brought up about how the locals essentially operate with a hospitality mindset, because I've actually had a few different guests have a similar analogy, is that you're almost born with a hospitality degree. You want to be the caretakers. I can't tell you how often, you probably get this now living out here, somebody texts you the day of and they're like, hey, I'm in Vegas, let's go out, and I'm staying here. Or people come in town and you tell them, hey, you could stay with me, I'll give you all of the good spots to go to, but I can't be out there with you because I still have to live a life. But I will give you as much information and spew out as much love as I can in whatever sense, without actually physically being present with you.
Yeah, exactly. I know. it's like every month I feel like I've got that call or that text from a person who's coming to Vegas that wants to live like a tourist. And I play a little bit of a tour guide a little bit. So, but I kind of embrace it because it could be a lot worse, So at least we have the opportunity to be able to do that in a city like that. That's why it's so unique, and I love it. Even if we're tired of it, even if I don't feel like going to the Strip that day, you never know what you're going to see or what you're going to experience. So I kind of just try to have an open mind with all of it. So
before we get out of here, I got 2 questions. First question: any TikTok advice for people who are beginning their TikTok journey, looking for growth, or anything about the platform that should be acknowledged that isn't generally spoken about?
2 big things, and these are the most important things. These are the things I followed. My boy Dylan actually put me onto these Sangley. He's a sneaker, I guess a sneaker content creator from out here, and runs a sneaker resale business. And he told me when I first started, post. Because I met him when he had like 2,000 subscribers on TikTok. And that was what, 2,000 followers. That was about a year ago. And I seen him grow and get his channel verified. He's at like 160 now. And we were just having this conversation. I was having this conversation with him the other day of how quickly he grew. And I never thought I'd get into TikTok, and then I started growing. So yeah, but to answer your question, post. Like literally as you're starting, you gotta be posting 3-4 times a day. You have to. And I think that's like it's stunted my growth by not doing that. Posting is the most important thing because you're gonna learn, and you're also it's a snowball effect. When your content starts picking up, you start learning your audience, and the algorithm starts recommending your stuff more as you start getting more views. So the views are the most important thing. And another thing I'd say is duetting and stitching as well. Utilizing the platform in a way where you have a relationship with TikTok, like almost personally. Is like, as TikTok is recommending you things, take on those recommendations and start using them and start trying to implement them into your content. And have an honest look at your content and think, does this compare to someone else's content that's viral right now? They have an honest look at your content and think, hey, is this worth the views that I want it to have? And, it's not even just about, I say the aesthetic. The aesthetic is a point of it, but, are the colors correct? Is my voice correct? And just, is it valuable? That's the most important thing, I feel like. I try to put value into every post I make.
Value. So. Last question, and it's the same question I ask everybody. What does Las Vegas mean to you?
Everything. It means growth. I have a spiritual relationship with this city. So for me, I learned a lot about myself growing up here. Not only about the culture of the people here, but also about myself and how life really works. It kind of brought like a guru spirituality out of me being here. I don't know if it's because of the lust and the temptation that the city has on the face. Yeah, I learned a lot. I learned that I could go into a whole nother conversation with you about that, but I'll save that for another day. So.
Well, we'll save it for another day. Where do I send all the listeners and those who are watching on YouTube to follow you along your journey, or anything else you'd like to mention?
You could follow me on Instagram and TikTok at ItsDaniel.Leo. Don't forget the it's ItsDaniel.Leo. Follow me for everything Vegas, putting you on daily with everything Vegas.
Boom. As you said it, you heard it here first, and not just TikTok. Nope. Daniel, thank you for coming on, man. I'm glad that we were finally able to do this, and it just blows my mind how in the matter of 6 months, things have changed for both of us so dramatically. But it's awesome to see your growth. Huge fan, and I know we'll have a lot of collaborative opportunities in the future.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you next time.